The rain hits Manhattan like it has a grudge, not the soft kind that makes people pull their collars up and walk faster. This is the kind that floods gutters in under 10 minutes, the kind that turns yellow cab headlights into smeared streaks of gold against black pavement, the kind of rain that makes a person feel like the city itself is trying to wash something away. Seo Rin-ah steps out of the black town car at 11:47 p.m., one heel catching the edge of the curb. She steadies herself. The driver offers an umbrella. She waves it off. The rain soaks through her wool coat before she reaches the front door of the building, a tower of black steel and floor-to-ceiling glass rising 62 stories above the Upper West Side. The kind of building that doesn't have a sign out front. The kind where the doorman already knows your face before you speak. She married into this address 14 months ago. She still hasn't gotten used to how quiet it is inside. Welcome to Afro-Korean Films HQ, where every story we tell is one most people are too afraid to say out loud. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button now and turn on your notifications, because the story you're about to hear does not stop here. Now, stay with us. The elevator opens directly into the penthouse foyer. Italian marble, warm amber lighting that never flickers, a single orchid on the entrance table, white petals, replaced every Thursday by a woman Rin-ah has never once spoken to. Everything in this home is perfect. That has always been the problem. Rin-ah sets her bag down without making a sound. She hadn't planned to be home tonight. The company dinner in Midtown ran shorter than expected. The client canceled last minute, and rather than sit alone in a hotel restaurant pretending to check her phone, she came back. Simple as that. But the moment the elevator doors close behind her, something in her chest tightens. She stands still, listens. The penthouse is 4,200 square feet. At this hour, it should be silent. Her husband rarely entertains after 10. His grandmother's wing is on the east side, sealed off with its own hallway and its own entrance. The housekeeper leaves at 8, so the sound she hears now, low, urgent, coming from behind the closed door of the private lounge, should not exist. Two voices. She doesn't move toward them right away. She just stands there in the foyer in her rain-soaked coat, water dripping from her hem onto the marble floor, listening to the rhythm of a conversation she cannot yet make out. One voice is his. She would know Kang Daejin's voice in a blackout, in a crowd, in a dream. 14 months of marriage will do that to a person. She knows the version he uses at dinner parties. Smooth, measured, just warm enough to make people feel chosen. She knows the version he uses on phone calls at 2 in the morning, stripped down, flat, like a man reciting instructions to a machine. But the voice she hears right now is neither of those. It's quieter, and somehow that makes it worse. Rin-ah moves, slowly. Her heels are already in her hand before she realizes she's removed them. Her feet press silently against the marble as she crosses the foyer toward the hallway that leads to the lounge. The door is not fully closed. A 2-inch gap runs along the frame, a slice of warm amber light cutting into the dark hall. She stops just short of it, presses her back lightly against the wall, and then she hears it clearly. Just take a taxi and leave, tonight. 4 seconds of complete silence. Rin-ah does not breathe. The words themselves are not the thing that stops her heart. It's the way he says them. Not cold exactly, not cruel, but final. The way a man speaks when a decision has already been made and the only thing left is for the other person to accept it. Someone is in that room with her husband. Someone he is trying to send away, at midnight, in a rainstorm. Now here's what we want to know. Before we go any further, if you came home early tonight and heard your spouse's voice behind a closed door talking to someone you didn't know was there, would you open it? Or would you stand exactly where Rin-ah is standing right now, afraid of what you might see? Tell us in the comments, because what Rin-ah does next changes everything. Chapter 2. She doesn't open the door. Not yet. The other voice answers, and it stops Rin-ah completely. It belongs to a woman, young, soft at the edges. But underneath that softness is something tightly wound, something that sounds like a person holding themselves together by sheer will. The kind of voice that has been crying recently and is determined not to cry again right now. "I can't just disappear like that," the woman says. "You know I can't." Daejin's response is immediate. "You don't have a choice." Rin-ah shifts her weight, moves 1 inch closer to the gap in the door. The amber light from the lounge cuts across the hallway floor in a thin, warm line, and she angles her body until she can see through it. Not the full room, just a slice. A corner of the cashmere sofa, the edge of the floor-to-ceiling window where rain slides down the glass in sheets, and a woman standing near the window with her arms crossed loosely over her chest, her posture carrying the particular tension of someone who is trying very hard not to look as frightened as she feels. Rin-ah knows who she is. She has seen her before. In passing, the way you see furniture in a room you don't use often. A face that registered and then moved to the background. A quiet presence in the east wing of the penthouse, always carrying something. A tray, a folded blanket, a paper bag from the pharmacy. Always nodding. Always invisible. Her name is Zariah Cole, Black British, mid-20s, hired 7 months ago through a private medical staffing agency to care for Daejin's grandmother, a 78-year-old woman named Madame Kang, who has not left the East Wing in 3 months. Zariah was professional, efficient. She learned the old woman's schedule, her medication timing, her preferred tea temperature. She caused no disruption. She asked for nothing beyond her salary. Rin-ah had barely thought about her since the day she was introduced. That fact alone now feels like a failure of attention, because the woman standing at that window right now is not invisible. She is the most visible person in the room. And Daejin, a man who has stood in boardrooms with heads of state and never once let his eyes betray a single emotion, is looking at her like something in him is conflicted. "They already know I was here," Zariah says. Her voice drops. "Sending me out at midnight in a taxi doesn't erase that. It just makes me easier to pick off. I have people. Your people didn't stop what almost happened 3 weeks ago." She turns from the window and faces him directly. "Or are we not talking about that?" Silence. The kind that has history inside it. Rin-ah's fingers press flat against the wall. 3 weeks ago. She tries to pull at the thread of that. 3 weeks ago, Daejin had been in Seoul for 4 days, a business trip she hadn't questioned. He came back quieter than usual. She had assumed it was a deal gone sideways. She had not asked. She rarely asked. "I'm not doing this tonight," Daejin says. "You don't get to decide when this conversation happens," Zariah replies. "You brought me into this house. You didn't tell me what that meant, and now you want to hand me a taxi fare and act like none of it." "Keep your voice down." "Why? Because she might hear?" Zariah's voice catches, just barely. She's not even home. Another silence. Rin-ah does not move, does not breathe, does not make a single sound against the marble floor. Because what she is feeling right now has no clean name. It is not simply jealousy. It is not simply betrayal. It is something colder and more precise. The specific feeling of realizing that a person you share a bed with has an entire interior world that you have never once been invited into, and that someone else has. Daejin walks toward the window. He stops a few feet from Zariah. He does not touch her, but the distance between them is not the distance of a man speaking to an employee. Rin-ah sees his jaw tighten, sees him exhale once, slow and controlled. And then she sees something she has not seen in 14 months of marriage, not at their wedding, not at his grandmother's last health scare, not even on the night she asked him whether he actually wanted to be married to her, and he answered by pouring them both a drink instead of speaking. His hands are not entirely steady. "If I leave," Zariah says quietly, "they will find me. And you know what they'll do." Daejin doesn't answer, which is its own kind of answer. Rin-ah stares at the side of her husband's face through a 2-inch gap in a door she is terrified to open, and understands with sudden, sickening clarity that this is not the first time these two people have stood this close to each other in the dark. This is not the beginning of something. This is the middle. Chapter 3. Then Zariah says the thing that splits the night open. I didn't ask to fall in love with you. It comes out low, not dramatic. Not the way someone says a line they've been rehearsing, the way someone says something they've been holding back for so long that when it finally surfaces, it barely sounds like words at all, just the raw shape of something true. The room goes completely still. Rin-ah's back is against the wall, and she feels the wallpaper texture against her shoulder blades like something physical anchoring her to the floor. Her coat is still damp. Water has dried cold at the hem of her dress. She does not move. She does not make a sound. She just waits. Because the next 5 seconds are going to determine the rest of her life, and she knows it, and there is nothing she can do except stand in the dark hall and let them arrive. Daejin does not speak. He doesn't deny it. He doesn't step back, doesn't clear his throat, doesn't produce the clipped, dismissive tone he uses when someone says something he wants to end. And Rin-ah knows that tone. She has been on the receiving end of it more than once in this marriage. He just stands there, still as a man who has been caught not in a lie, but in a truth he was hoping would never need to be spoken out loud. Zariah keeps going. Her voice is quieter now. The fear is still underneath it, but something else has come to the surface, something exhausted and clear-eyed. I know what I am to everyone in this building. I'm the woman in the East Wing, the help. I keep my head down and I do my job and I don't take up space. She looks at him. But you stopped treating me like that a long time ago, and I think you know it. Daejin finally moves. He walks to the bar cart near the far wall. Dark walnut, bottles of Pappy Van Winkle and Claas Azul lined up like soldiers, and he pours himself 2 fingers of bourbon. He doesn't pour one for her. He doesn't pour one for himself either, really. He just holds the glass. You're putting things on me that aren't there, he says. But am I? He doesn't answer. You sat with her for 6 hours when she had the fever in February, Zariah says. You didn't call the doctor first. You called me at 2 a.m. And when I came down that hall, you looked at me like... She stops, swallows. Like I was the only person in the world you trusted to walk through that door. Daejin sets the glass down without drinking from it. That was about my grandmother. I know it was. I know that's where it started. Her voice holds steady. But that's not where it stayed. And you know that too. The rain outside pushes against the glass, a low, constant pressure. Somewhere in the building, an elevator hums between floors. The penthouse settles around them in that particular way of very expensive buildings, the silence that money bases, thick and sealed and total. Rin-ah's nails press into her own palm. She is thinking about February. She remembers February. Daejin had told her his grandmother had a minor episode. Temperature fluctuation, the doctor adjusted her medications, everything was fine by morning. He had said it in the tone he used to describe a minor inconvenience. She had believed him. She had been relieved there was nothing serious to worry about. She had not known he spent 6 hours in that room. She had not known who he called. This doesn't change anything, Daejin says. His voice is controlled again now, not fully but close. Feeling something and acting on it are 2 different things. You're still leaving tonight. Zariah looks at him for a long moment. You're the most powerful man in 3 different countries, she says. And you're standing there pretending you don't feel anything because if you admit it, you actually have to make a decision. Daejin says nothing. I'm not asking you to choose me, Zariah says. I'm asking you to stop pretending that what's happening in this house is nothing, because it isn't nothing, and we both know it. Silence stretches between them, long and dense and full of everything neither of them is saying. Behind the door, Rin-ah stands in the dark hall with her shoes in her hand and her heart completely shattered open, and she does not cry. She does not move. She does not make herself known, because she has just realized something that terrifies her even more than what she's heard. She is not angry at Zariah. She is angry at herself for spending 14 months in this apartment and never once making her husband look at her the way he is looking at this woman right now. Chapter 4, Rin-ah should leave. Every rational part of her brain is saying the same thing. Step back, go to the bedroom, close the door, deal with this in the morning when she can think clearly and speak without her voice breaking. That is what a composed woman does. That is what this life has trained her to do. She doesn't move an inch. Because Zoraya is still talking. And the things she is saying are pulling at something in Rin-ah that has nothing to do with jealousy anymore. Something older than this marriage, older than this apartment. Something that has been sitting quietly in the back of her chest for 14 months, asking questions she never let herself finish. "You want to know what I see when I look at you?" Zoraya says. She's not performing. There's no heat in it. Just honesty, flat and direct, the kind that can only come from someone who has nothing left to protect. I don't see the investor. I don't see the man whose name makes people go quiet in rooms. I see the man who comes to the East Wing at 10 o'clock at night and sits in that chair by the window and talks to his grandmother about his father, a man he hasn't spoken to in 11 years. I see the man who memorized her medication schedule better than the chart I keep on the wall. I see the man who told me once, completely out of nowhere, that the only place in the world he ever felt safe was in her kitchen when he was 7 years old. Daejin's face doesn't move, but something behind it does. "That's the man I fell in love with," Zoraya says, "not the one everyone else is afraid of." Rin-ah's grip on her shoes tightens. She is thinking about a night 8 months ago, a Wednesday. She had come to bed late after a call with her sister in Seoul, and Daejin was already awake, sitting on top of the covers, fully dressed, staring at the window with a glass of water he hadn't touched. She'd asked if everything was okay. He'd said yes. She had believed him because believing him was easier than pressing and getting silence in return. She wonders now, where had he been that night? She wonders how many nights she wrote off as work, as stress, as the particular emotional inaccessibility of a man who was simply built that way, and how many of those nights looked something like this. "You humanize me when it's convenient," Daejin says. His voice is quieter now, more careful. "You're using it as an argument for why you should stay, but staying isn't safe." "I know it isn't." "Zoraya, I've known for 3 months that it isn't safe," she says. "I stayed anyway." She pauses. "So don't stand there and act like you're protecting me by sending me away. You're protecting yourself." That lands differently than anything she's said before. Daejin doesn't respond immediately. He turns slightly, not toward the door but away from her, toward the window, and in the amber light of the lounge his profile is sharp and closed and very tired. Not the tiredness of a man who hasn't slept. The tiredness of a man who has been holding something heavy for a very long time and has run out of places to put it down. Rin-ah has never seen her husband look tired before. That fact alone cracks something open in her chest that she didn't know was sealed. "My grandmother asked about you this morning," he says finally. "She wanted to know if you were eating enough. She said you looked thin." Zoraya lets out something that is almost a laugh, quiet, broken at the edges. "She asked me the same thing yesterday. I told her I was fine." "Were you?" A long pause. "No," Zoraya says simply. The conversation shifts, not louder, but deeper, like two people who have finally stopped arguing about the surface of a thing and started speaking about what's underneath it. Rin-ah cannot look away from the gap in the door. "When I came to this house," Zoraya says, "I was not looking for anything except work. You know that. I needed the position. I needed the structure. I was not looking for—" She stops, tries again. "I didn't walk in here thinking this would happen. It just did. And I think part of you is angry at me for not being able to stop it, because you couldn't either." Daejin says nothing, which is the loudest thing he has said all night. Rin-ah straightens against the wall. Something is moving through her, not just grief, not just betrayal, but something sharper. The slow, awful turning of a key in a lock she didn't know existed. She has spent 14 months wondering why she always felt like a guest in this marriage, like someone who had been invited into a house but told, without words, to stay out of certain rooms. Now she understands. The room was already occupied. "You don't even know what you're protecting anymore, do you?" Zoraya says softly. Daejin goes very still. The walls, the security, the control, all of it, Zoraya continues. You built a fortress, and I'm starting to think you can't even remember what you put inside it. No response, just silence, and the rain. And somewhere behind the door, Rin-ah closes her eyes. Because the worst part, the part that will stay with her long after this night is over, is that she is not entirely sure Zoraya is wrong. Chapter 5. Then the temperature in the room drops. Not literally. The thermostat on the wall still reads 68 degrees. The gas fireplace in the far corner is still running low and blue. But something shifts, a current moving underneath the conversation, changing its nature entirely. Rin-ah feels it even through the wall, even through the gap in the door. What was intimate a moment ago is suddenly something else. Zoraya reaches into the front pocket of her uniform. She pulls out a folded piece of paper, white, standard, the kind printed from an office machine. She holds it out toward Daejin without a word. He looks at it, doesn't take it immediately. "Where did you get that?" he says. "Your private office." Her voice is steady. 3 weeks ago, the night you came back from Seoul and went straight there without turning on a single light in the rest of the house. I was coming back from the East Wing. Your office door wasn't fully latched. She keeps her arm extended. I saw the files open on your desk. Daejin takes the paper, unfolds it once. His eyes move across it, and his jaw locks. "You read my files." "I saw your files," Zoraya says. "There's a difference. I wasn't looking, but I saw. And once I saw, I couldn't pretend I hadn't. That was a breach." "Of what?" Her voice sharpens, just slightly. "Of your privacy? Of professional boundaries?" She looks at him directly. "You want to talk to me about boundaries right now, after everything in this room tonight?" He folds the paper again. His movements are controlled, too controlled, the kind of control that takes real effort. He places the paper flat on the coffee table between them, smooths the edge with 2 fingers, and then looks at her. "You don't understand what you're looking at." "I understand enough," she says. "I understand the name on those documents. I understand what that name means to you. And I understand why you've been carrying around whatever this is." She gestures at him, at all of him, at the exhaustion running just under the surface of every careful word. Like a man waiting for something he already knows is coming. Daejin is quiet. Behind the door, Rin-ah strains to hear every word. "The name on those files," Zoraya says. She pauses, not for effect, because what she is about to say is the kind of thing you say once and cannot take back. "Kang Daejin." The silence that follows is the longest of the night. Daejin does not move, does not breathe visibly. The bourbon glass on the bar cart catches the low light. "Your brother is alive," Zoraya says. Rin-ah's back comes off the wall. Brother. The word hits her like a physical thing. In 14 months of marriage, through dinners, through late nights, on through the careful architecture of their shared life, Daejin has never once mentioned a brother. Not in passing, not in old photographs, not in the one conversation she'd tried to have about his family history, which he had redirected so smoothly she hadn't even noticed until hours later. A brother. Alive. "Lower your voice," Daejin says. His tone has changed completely. The controlled warmth is gone. What is left underneath is something flat and very dangerous. "I'm already whispering," Zoraya says. "Lower it anyway." She does. "The documents showed correspondence," she says, quieter now. "Dates, coordinates, money moving through shell accounts in 3 different countries. The syndicate you've been running security protocols against for the last 8 months?" She pauses. "The architect of it isn't a rival. It isn't someone you don't know." Daejin sets his hands flat on the back of the cashmere sofa. "Don't," he says. "You already know what I'm going to say." "I said don't." Zoraya looks at him for a long moment, at the tension in his shoulders, at the way his hands press into the fabric like he is trying to ground himself through the texture of it. "He's the one," she says, "the one funding the operation, the one who's been moving people into your supply chain for the past year, the one who ordered the test run on your grandmother's kitchen 3 months ago." Her voice doesn't waver. Your brother is the one trying to kill you. The room goes so quiet that Rin-ah can hear the ice shifting in the bar cart. She is standing in the dark hall with her back against the wall and her shoes still in her hand, and her entire understanding of the man she married is rearranging itself in real time, like furniture being moved in a room she thought she had memorized. A brother no one knew existed. Alive. Funding the people hunting Daejin. The grandmother's kitchen. The grandmother Zariah has been caring for, the one who asked about her this morning, the one who wanted to know if she was eating enough. Someone tried to poison her. A test run. Rin-ah's mouth goes dry, the warmth of the foyer, the orchid on the table, the perfect amber light. All of it feels different now. Like a stage set. Like the specific, careful beauty of a place designed to make you feel safe so you don't look too closely at the exits. She has been living inside a Target, and no one told her. Daejin straightens. He doesn't look at Zariah when he speaks. He looks at the rain-covered window, at the blurred gold lights of the city 62 stories below, at the reflection of his own face in the glass. You weren't supposed to see that, he says. His voice is very quiet, and underneath it, underneath all that control, all that flatness, there is something that sounds almost like grief. I know, Zariah says. A long pause. That's exactly why I stayed. Chapter 6. The paper is still on the coffee table. Nobody picks it up. Daejin moves first, not toward Zariah, not toward the door, but toward the window. He stands with his back to the room, both hands loose at his sides, staring at the city below like he is calculating something. The kind of stillness that is not calm. The kind that comes right before a decision. 8 months, he says. His voice is flat, operational. The warmth that was there 10 minutes ago has been packed away somewhere out of reach. 8 months of moving resources, rerouting accounts, pulling people off other assignments. All of it pointed at a ghost. He pauses. And the whole time it was him. Zariah doesn't respond. She has said what she came to say. Now she waits. How much did you read? Enough to understand the structure, she says. The shell accounts run through 3 holding companies, 2 registered in the Cayman Islands, 1 in Singapore. The payments route inward toward a logistics firm operating out of Incheon. The firm has a parent company. She meets his eyes when he turns. That parent company has your family name on the founding charter. Daejin goes very still. Not yours, Zariah adds quietly. The other one. The gas fireplace ticks, low and blue. 3 months ago, she continues, when your grandmother got sick, the kitchen staff reported a new cleaning solution had been swapped into the supply order, unlabeled. I flagged it to building management and they pulled it. I didn't tell you because I didn't have proof yet. I thought it was a procurement error. Her jaw tightens. It wasn't. You should have told me. I know that now. The moment you found anything, I know, she says sharper. But I also know that the second I told you, you would have sent me away, and I needed to stay long enough to be sure. She holds his gaze. I needed to be sure it wasn't random, that it was coordinated, that the same hand moving money through those accounts was the same hand that touched your grandmother's kitchen. Daejin turns back to the window. The city bleeds gold and red through the rain-soaked glass. 62 floors below, a taxi cuts across the intersection, yellow roof light on, moving fast, heading nowhere that matters to anyone in this room. If you stay, he says, you die. You keep saying that. Because it's the only thing I've said tonight that is completely true. Zariah crosses her arms. And if I leave? He doesn't answer. She answers for him. If I leave, I'm a loose end. I've seen the files. I know the name. I know the structure. She tilts her head. You know what they do with loose ends. I have people who can move you. New identity. New city. It would take 48 hours is a long time when someone already knows where I sleep. Silence. Daejin's jaw works. I'm not a package you can reroute, Zariah says. Her voice is quiet but iron-edged. I came to this country 4 years ago with 2 suitcases and a reference letter. I built something here. Slow and small but real. And I am not going to disappear into some new name in some city I don't know because a man I was never supposed to fall in love with can't figure out how to keep me safe without erasing me. Daejin turns from the window. For a long moment, he just looks at her. And in his face, in the space between the control and the exhaustion, there is something raw, something that does not have a boardroom name. "You want the truth?" he says. "I've been waiting for it all night." "The truth is that I have run every possible outcome of you staying in this building," he says. "Every scenario, every variable, and in none of them does keeping you here end without blood." He steps closer. Not romantic, urgent. "Not because I don't trust you, because the people coming don't care about what you know or don't know. They care about proximity, and right now, you are standing inside the radius." Zaraya stares at him. "Then move the radius," she says simply. He stops. She holds his gaze. "You built this empire by refusing to accept the terms that other people set. You don't run. You redraw the lines." A beat. "So redraw them." The fireplace ticks. The rain presses. Something in Daejin's face shifts. And for the first time tonight, it is not toward control or distance or calculation. It is toward a choice he has been avoiding since the moment he realized this woman knew too much and still chose to stay. And then his phone lights up on the coffee table. One message, no name, 3 words. His eyes read it. His face closes immediately, every trace of what was just there sealed over in under a second. He picks up the phone, reads it again, pockets it. "Get away from the window," he says. His voice has changed completely. "What? Now?" He moves across the room in 4 steps, positions himself between her and the glass. "They're not coming in 48 hours. Zaraya goes still. "How long?" He looks at her. "If I leave, I die alone," she says. Not a question, not an argument, just the truth of it, landing flat in the room. Daejin says nothing. Which means yes. Chapter 7, the door opens, not with force, not with noise. It swings inward slowly, controlled, deliberate, and Seo Rin-ah steps into the lounge with her shoes still in her left hand and her rain-damp coat still on her shoulders, and an expression on her face so completely composed that it is more frightening than any version of rage would have been. Both of them freeze. Zaraya takes 1 step back instinctively. Daejin does not move at all. For 3 full seconds, no one speaks. The only sound is the rain against the glass and the low tick of the fireplace and the particular quality of silence that fills a room when everyone in it knows something irreversible has just happened. Rin-ah looks at Zaraya first, not with the hot, consuming look of a woman seeing a rival, with something slower, more precise. She takes in Zaraya's posture, tense, upright, afraid but not guilty. Takes in the uniform still worn at midnight, takes in the paper on the coffee table, the untouched bourbon glass, the distance between the two of them that is professional on the surface, and something else entirely underneath. Then she looks at her husband. Daejin is watching her the way a man watches something he has miscalculated, not panicked but recalibrating. His eyes move to the doorway she just came through, then back to her face. "You're home early," he says. It is possibly the most inadequate sentence spoken in this apartment in 14 months. Rin-ah sets her shoes down on the floor beside her, carefully, like she is placing them exactly where they belong. She straightens up, adjusts the collar of her coat with one hand, looks at her husband. "I've been in the hall," she says. Daejin's expression doesn't change, but something behind it does. "For how long?" he asks. "Long enough." Zaraya makes a small sound, not a word, just the beginning of one immediately stopped. Rin-ah turns to look at her, holds the look for a moment, then looks back at Daejin. "You were going to send her away in a taxi," Rin-ah says. Her voice is level, unhurried, the tone of a woman who has been standing in the cold long enough that the cold no longer registers. "At midnight, in this rain, after everything she just told you." Daejin says nothing. "I heard the files," she continues. "I heard the name. I heard what she found in the kitchen 3 months ago. A pause. I heard what she said about February. The fireplace ticks. I want to ask you something, Rin-ah says to her husband. And I want you to think carefully before you answer. Daejin waits. Is she your mistress? The word lands exactly the way she knew it would. Zaraya flinches. Daejin's jaw tightens. The air in the room compresses around it. That is not... I'm not finished, Rin-ah says quietly. Not loud, not sharp, just clear. The kind of voice that does not need volume because it has already decided it will not be interrupted. I have spent 14 months in this apartment asking myself what I was missing, what I wasn't seeing, what I was getting wrong. She tilts her head. And the answer was standing in the East Wing the whole time, caring for your grandmother, learning your schedule, knowing things about you that I apparently never earned the right to know. Rin-ah, is she your mistress? She asks again. Daejin looks at her directly. No. Then what is she? The silence that follows is long. Not the silence of someone avoiding a question. The silence of someone trying to find the language for something that has no clean category. Zaraya is the one who speaks. I'm not his mistress, she says. Her voice is steady, quiet, carrying the particular weight of someone who is terrified and telling the truth at the same time. Rin-ah turns to her. Zaraya meets her eyes without looking away. Then what are you? Rin-ah asks. Her voice has lost its edge, not because she is less angry, but because she is listening now, really listening, the way she should have been listening for months. Zaraya holds her gaze. I'm the reason your husband is still alive, she says. The rain pushes hard against the 62nd floor windows. Nobody moves. Rin-ah stares at this woman she looked through for 7 months, this woman she categorized and filed away under invisible, and feels the entire structure of what she thought she understood tonight begin to shift again. She came into this room with one story. She is standing in a completely different one. Start from the beginning, Rin-ah says, and her voice, for the first time all night, is not composed. It is fractured and asking. Chapter 8. Zaraya doesn't sit down. She stands near the window with her arms at her sides and tells it straight. No softening, no performance, no pause for effect. Just the facts laid out in the order they happened, one after another, the way someone speaks when they have been carrying something heavy for a long time and finally have permission to set it down. 7 months ago, I came to this building to care for Madame Kang, she begins. I knew the position carried a high-level confidentiality requirement. I signed the agreements. I kept to myself. A breath. 4 months in, I started noticing things. Staff coming and going on irregular schedules, a maintenance crew on the East Wing floor that I never saw work on anything, a delivery that arrived at the service entrance at 3 in the morning and was gone by 4. Rin-ah stands with her arms crossed, listening. I flagged it to building security. They told me it was managed. I let it go. Zaraya's voice stays even. Then 3 months ago, I was doing Madame Kang's morning medication prep. I went to the kitchen for her tea, and there was a new bottle on the prep counter. Cleaning solution, unlabeled, sitting right next to the kettle. She pauses. Wait, it didn't belong there. The placement was too deliberate. So I took it. I had it tested privately. The room is absolutely still. It was a compound, she says. Odorless, dissolvable, fast-acting in high doses, slow enough to look like organ failure in small, repeated ones. She looks at Daejin. Administered through steam inhalation, it was almost undetectable in a standard tox screen. Rin-ah uncrosses her arms. Someone was going to poison his grandmother, Zaraya says, with me in the room, positioning it so that when she died, the most likely suspect was the caregiver with access. She says it without self-pity, just the clear, hard shape of it. They were going to kill her, and then they were going to make sure I took the blame for it. Rin-ah hears it, processes it. You went to Daejin. That night. Yes. And you didn't go to the police. Zaraya holds her gaze. With what? A bottle I removed from the scene? A private test result with no chain of custody? against a network that apparently has access to a secured residential building on the 62nd floor of a building with biometric entry? A beat. Who was I supposed to call? Rin-ah has no answer for that. He verified the compound, Zoraya continues. He traced the delivery through the service entrance logs. And that's when he found the connection. The logistics firm, the shell accounts, the founding charter. Her voice drops. And the name. Rin-ah turns to Daejin. Your brother. Daejin is standing near the bar cart. He has not moved since she entered. He looks like a man who is doing the math on something he already knows the answer to and despises the result. Half-brother, he says. The word comes out like it costs him something. Different mother, my father's first family. He was written out of the estate when I was 12. I was told he died in an accident in Busan 7 years ago. His eyes are flat. I believed it because I needed to believe it. And he's been alive this whole time. Running a structure that took 8 months of my best people to half-map, and I never once looked in the right direction because the right direction was behind me. Rin-ah is quiet for a moment. And I was never told any of this, she says. Not shouting, not even accusatory, just precise. For 8 months this was happening, in this building, around me, and I was never told. Daejin meets her eyes. No, he says. You weren't. Why? The question sits in the room. Daejin sets down the bourbon glass, looks at his wife, really looks the way he has not looked at her in longer than either of them could honestly name. Because telling you meant putting a target on you that I couldn't control, he says. The less you knew, the less useful you were to anyone trying to get to me through you. His voice is careful, measured. It was not a kindness. I know that. Rin-ah stares at him. You were protecting me by keeping me blind, she says. Yes. And you decided that on my behalf, without asking me. Yes. She breathes in slowly, out slowly. The rain runs hard down the glass. She found the poison, Rin-ah says quietly. She traced the accounts. She stayed when she could have run. A pause. And you were going to send her away in a taxi. Daejin says nothing. Zoraya is looking at the floor. I was the only person in this building, Rin-ah says, who didn't know what was actually happening. Her voice is not loud, but it fills every corner of the room. Not the help, not the threat, just... She stops. Just the wife. No one speaks. The grief in her voice is not the grief of a cheated woman. It is the grief of a woman who realizes she was kept so safe that she was never truly let in. Zoraya looks up, opens her mouth to speak, and then, from somewhere below, a sound, sharp, distinct, unmistakable, glass breaking, then another sound, pop, 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 gunshots. The three of them turn toward the window at the same moment, and 62 floors below, the front entrance of the building explodes in a flash of white light. They're here. Chapter 9. Daejin moves before the echo dies. He crosses the room in 4 steps. I kills every light with a single panel switch beside the door. The lounge drops into darkness, lit only by city glow and the distant orange flicker still visible 62 floors below. His voice drops to a frequency that carries no warmth, no hesitation, nothing except instruction. Away from the glass, both of you, now! Zoraya moves immediately. She steps back from the window and presses herself against the inner wall, her breathing controlled, her eyes tracking the room. Whatever fear was in her voice before, it is still there. But underneath it is something steadier. A woman who has been quietly preparing for this moment for 3 months. Rin-ah does not move as fast. Not because she is frozen, because the thing she is looking at 62 floors below, the flashing light, the smoke rising in a thin, dark column against the rain, the second vehicle now blocking the service exit, is dismantling something in her in real time. This is not a story anymore, not a conversation through a gap in a door. This is the building she sleeps in, the lobby she walks through every morning in good shoes with a coffee cup in hand, and it is on fire. Rin-ah, Daejin's voice. She moves. He is already at the hidden panel behind the bookcase on the east wall. She has lived in this apartment for 14 months and did not know that panel existed. It opens with a key code, not a handle. Inside, a rack of equipment she does not have names for, a black bag already packed, a firearm in a shoulder holster, and a second firearm in a locked box that he opens now without hesitation. Pop, pop. Closer this time. 42nd floor. Maybe, moving up fast. How many? Zoraya asks. Her voice is low and even. At least 6 on entry, Daejin says, pulling the holster over his shoulder with the efficiency of someone who has done this before, many times. 2 more on the service stairwell. Building security is already down. That's what the first charge was for. Cameras? Cut at the source. They planned this. He looks at Rin-ah. She is standing in the center of the dark room with her bare feet on the cashmere rug and her coat still on her shoulders and her eyes completely clear. Not hysterical, not collapsed, just processing. Taking in the room, the panel, the man she married, the weapon in his hand, and assigning each thing its actual weight for the first time. "You've done this before," she says, not a question. "Yes," he says. "How many times?" "Enough." He pulls a second firearm from the locked box, holds it out to her. Grip first. Rin-ah looks at it. She looks at his face. "Do you know how to use one?" he asks. "My father made sure of it," she says, "before the wedding." Something moves across Daejin's face. Brief, almost imperceptible. He keeps the weapon extended. She takes it. The weight of it settles into her palm. And with it, something else settles. Not comfort, not readiness, the specific, clarifying weight of a situation that has stopped being abstract. Pop, pop, pop. 35th floor now. They are moving through the building methodically, fast. "You said I was already a target," Rin-ah says. She checks the firearm with practiced hands, magazine, chamber, safety, and Daejin watches her do it. "Before the wedding. You said my family was already targeted." "Yes. So marrying me wasn't—" She stops, reorganizes. The marriage was a structure. "It was protection," he says. "Legally, financially, logistically. Under my name, you became harder to touch." A pause. "I did not manufacture the marriage, but I accelerated it, because the timeline changed." She absorbs this. "And you were never going to tell me." "I was trying to keep you alive," he says. "That's not the same thing as keeping me informed." He doesn't argue with her. There is no time to argue. And somewhere in the flat, stripped-down way he takes the correction without flinching, she sees something she didn't expect. Not remorse, exactly. Accountability, the kind that doesn't perform itself. Zoraya is already at the east corridor. She turns back. "The grandmother," she says. "We have to move her." Daejin shakes his head once, sharp. "She's already out, 40 minutes ago. Medical transport. I moved her the moment I got the first read on the timeline." Zoraya exhales. "You knew they were coming tonight," Zoraya says, "before I even came to this room." "I suspected. The message I received tonight confirmed it." He looks at her directly. "I was trying to get you out before it started." "In a taxi," she says. "Yes, because you thought that was the safest option." "I thought it gave you the best chance." The elevator shaft makes a sound, not a ding, not a mechanism, a hard metallic impact, someone forcing a manual override on one of the lower floors, 28 floors below, maybe less. "We have 4 minutes, Daejin says. He pulls the black bag off the rack. "There is a secondary exit on this floor. It's not on any public building schematic. It leads to a private stairwell that exits onto the service alley on 73rd. A car is already there." "Whose car?" Rin-ah asks. "Mine. Different name, clean plates." Zoraya moves to follow him. Rin-ah stands still for one more second. She looks at the lounge, the cashmere sofa, the bourbon glass, the folded paper still on the coffee table, the room where she stood in the dark hall and heard a marriage and a secret, and a love she wasn't part of. The room where everything she thought she understood cracked open, and something harder and realer came through. She turns away from it, follows her husband into the dark, firearm in hand, eyes open. "You should have told me from the beginning," she says as they move through the corridor. "I know," Daejin says. He doesn't say he's sorry, but the way he says it, flat, direct, no defense, is the most honest thing he has said to her in 14 months. They reach the hidden door. He enters the code, and as the stairwell opens in front of them, cold air rushing up from 62 floors of concrete and dark. Rin-ah hears it. 4 floors below. Footsteps. Chapter 10. They stop moving. All 3 of them. The stairwell stretches above and below in identical concrete silence, gray walls, wire cage lighting, the faint chemical smell of a space that exists only for emergencies. The footsteps below are not running. They are slow, deliberate. The pace of someone who knows exactly where they are going and is not afraid of being heard. 1 person, maybe 2. Daejin raises his right hand. Closed fist. Stop. They stop. He angles his body toward the railing and looks down through the spiral of the stairwell, iron handrails disappearing into darkness. 6, 7 floors below. He pulls back immediately, looks at both women, holds up 2 fingers, 2 people below, moving up. He points upward. The roof access is 12 floors above them. The secondary exit to the service alley is 4 floors below, blocked. He looks at Rin-ah, then at Zaraya. Then he makes a decision with his eyes before he makes one with his words. "Roof," he breathes. Just the word, nothing else. They move, fast but controlled. No running, no sound, every footstep placed deliberately on the outer edge of each stair, tread where the concrete is thickest and quietest. Rin-ah's bare feet are silent. Zaraya's flat shoes are nearly so. Daejin moves like a man built for exactly this. Fluid, low, economical, like someone who learned a long time ago how to disappear through a building. 6 floors up, 7, 8. The footsteps below them stop. All 3 of them freeze on the landing between floors. 3 seconds. 4. Then a voice. Below them. Male. Speaking in clipped Korean that echoes off the concrete walls and travels upward clean and clear. 62nd floor is empty. They've moved. Check the auxiliary stairwell. Daejin exhales once. They keep climbing. Roof access door is steel. Heavy, alarmed under normal operations, but Daejin has a bypass on his phone that kills the alarm signal at the panel level. He runs it now as they reach the final landing. The small screen on his phone flickers green. He pushes through. Cold air hits them like a wall. The roof of the building is wide and flat and utterly exposed. Manhattan spread out in every direction below them. Rain still falling but lighter now. The city lights blurred and gold and indifferent. A water tower to the left. Mechanical units running low. A helipad marker painted in faded yellow on the far side of the roof. The paint cracked and weather-worn. No helicopter. Rin-ah clocks it immediately. There's nothing here. There will be. Daejin is already on his phone. Zaraya moves to the edge of the mechanical units and positions herself against them, out of the direct sightline of the roof access door. She is watching it. Rin-ah watches her watch it. 3 minutes pass. Nobody speaks. Then Daejin says, quietly, to both of them, "There is a team in the air. 7 minutes." Rin-ah nods. Zaraya nods. 7 minutes. Daejin looks at Zaraya. "When this is over," he says, "you'll be moved to a secured location. New documentation. New city if you want it. Full resources." He pauses. "That offer stands regardless of tonight." Zaraya looks at him. "And if I don't want a new city?" He holds her gaze. "Then we figure out what comes next." It is not a declaration. It is not the language of a man who has resolved anything. It is the language of a man who is, for the first time, leaving a door open instead of closing it before someone can walk through. Rin-ah is standing 6 feet away, firearm still in hand, rain on her face, listening to every word. This is the moment she expected to feel destroyed by. She doesn't. What she feels is something she cannot immediately name, something that exists in the space between loss and clarity. Oh, everything she thought this marriage was has burned down tonight. Everything she was kept from, every room she was locked out of, every version of Daejin that was shown to her, and every version that wasn't. All of it is ash now, and standing in the ash, she can finally see the ground. She looks at her husband. "I want to know everything," she says. "Not summaries, not managed information, everything. The accounts, the structure, the brother, all of it." She holds his gaze. "If I'm a target regardless, if my name is already in those files, then I'm not standing next to you blind. Not anymore." Daejin looks at her. For the first time tonight, he doesn't calculate before he answers. "Okay," he says. One word. Clean, no conditions attached. Rin-ah turns to Zariah. The two women look at each other in the rain. And there is a conversation happening in that look that has no words. A woman who was kept safe by being kept ignorant, looking at a woman who was made dangerous by knowing too much. Two people on opposite ends of the same man's choices. "If she takes that taxi," Rin-ah says, not to Zariah, to Daejin, "I go with her." The words land like something physical. Daejin looks at his wife, really looks, the way he hasn't looked since long before tonight. Since some point in this marriage when looking became too much like letting someone see what was actually there. She means it. He can see that she means it. And something happens in his face that has not happened tonight, has not happened in months, maybe longer. The control doesn't drop, but behind it, something surfaces. Something that has no tactical name, no boardroom application. Something that is simply the private face of a man realizing he has been so focused on keeping the people around him alive that he forgot to consider whether they actually wanted to stay. Zariah looks between them. Daejin looks at Zariah. "You're not taking a taxi," he says. Zariah is very still. "Tonight or after," he says. "You're not going alone." A pause. "I should have said that an hour ago." She holds his gaze for a long moment, then nods. Once, small. The way people nod when they've been waiting a long time for something, and when it finally arrives, they don't want to make a sound in case it disappears. The sound of rotors cuts through the rain. Distant at first, then growing. Steady, rhythmic, coming in low from the north. The helipad lights flicker on. Activated remotely by Daejin's phone, yellow circles blooming in the wet dark. Rin-ah looks at the light spreading across the roof. She looks at the city below, all 62 floors of the life she thought she had, laid out in gold and rain and noise. She looks at the man she married, who kept her safe by keeping her a stranger to her own life. She looks at the woman who stayed inside a dangerous house not because she had nowhere to go, but because she believed someone in that house was worth staying for. And Rin-ah thinks about all the taxi rides she has taken in this city. Quick, clean exits, windows up, moving forward without looking back. Then she thinks about tonight, about standing in a dark hall in a rain-damp coat with her shoes in her hand, listening to the sound of a marriage she never fully entered. About opening that door anyway, about the weight of a firearm in a hand her father made sure was ready, about the particular feeling of a floor you've been walking on for 14 months finally showing you what it's actually made of. The helicopter breaks through the low cloud, black body, no markings, dropping toward the helipad with practiced precision. Daejin looks at both women. For the first time in his life, the narrator says quietly, the man who controlled everything had nothing left to hold on to, except the two people who had chosen, against every reasonable instinct, to stay. They run for the helicopter together. All three, through the rain, into whatever comes next. And for the first time in this story, nobody is running away. They are all running toward. And that, after everything, is the only kind of ending worth anything at all. That is where we leave them tonight, on a rooftop in the rain, 62 floors above a city that never stops moving, choosing each other in the middle of the most dangerous night of their lives. If this story moved you, shook something loose in you, or made you think about the doors in your own life you've been standing outside of, drop a comment below and tell us. Tell us which character you saw yourself in. Tell Tell us what you would have done in that hallway. Tell us what you think happens next, because the stories we tell here belong to all of us. And if you are not yet part of this community, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on every notification, because the stories coming to this channel are the ones most people are too afraid to say out loud, and we are just getting started. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Inspire someone tonight. We will see you in the next one.